Friends. That's weird. All right, so let's talk about the Manhattan. Welcome back to the channel. We've been going through our alternative martinis. You know, these are the classics that aren't martinis, but are from the martini heyday. Basically, remember, we started off with the Martini Masterclass. If you guys haven't checked out those videos, by all means, check them out. It's going to give you an idea, a good foundation of what a martini is supposed to be. And that way you know when you go to one of these bars and you order yourself a martini or you make yourself one, what it is that you're supposed to be getting. Last class, we made a Martinez, which was actually first time I got to try the Martinez. I'd never tried one before. It's a spirit-forward, sweeter, fruitier cocktail. But it was actually very unique, and some people compare the Martinez. Well, some people say the Martinez is actually the precursor to the Martini, but other people like to compare the Martinez to the Manhattan. That's what we're going to be making today, the Manhattan. It's a classic. It's actually one of the other drinks that I used to drink back in the day. When I first started drinking Manhattan, so I would say I started drinking, like I said, I've said this before, I started drinking Gibson's because of the novelty. I thought it was something great, it was something unique. And when I was young and stupid, I tried ordering a martini at one point, excuse me, a Manhattan one point before I was truly ready, before I really knew what it was. And I want to say I picked it up somewhere. I picked it up in a magazine article, GQ, Esquire, something, but it was one of those where it was basically talking about how the time of vodka was over. You know, it was time to go back to complex cocktails. It was time to go back to dark alcohols. And I had no idea what I was talking about. I had no idea what the article was trying to tell me. And I said, let me try it. And I ordered, I don't remember what I ordered. I remember where I ordered it. And I do remember that the bartender just kind of could tell that I didn't know what I was doing, kind of tried to tell me that I didn't want to drink it. And they were right. You know, I think if they would have spoken to me a little bit better, if they would have kind of given me a little bit more guidance, I might have enjoyed it more. But like I said, at that time, I wasn't ready. That was, you know, mid-20s. Right around my 30s, early 30s, I got really into bourbon. You know, I think character trait of most men of a certain age, you know, you hit a certain point, get into barbecue, get into smoking, get into bourbon. And I was very much, I had grown up in a family of Scotch drinkers, and I drank a decent amount of Scotch growing up, but at the same time, all of a sudden I just discovered bourbon, and to be honest, I've never looked back. I enjoy the peat, but there's something about bourbon that's just rounds out the cocktail, or I should say just rounds out cocktails, but at the same time, it's just got a more balanced flavor profile, in my opinion. Everybody, you know, has their has a right to their opinion. You guys prefer Scotch, by all means drink Scotch. You prefer whiskey, drink whiskey. Find what you like and enjoy that. But like I said, I was in my 30s, I really started drinking bourbon, and I was at a bar one time and I said, you know what, I think it's time to try the Manhattan again. So I gave it a shot and I was really into it. Actually, there was a bartender in Miami, I don't know where he's at, I find him every few years, Rob, who was the one who taught me that if you like the Manhattan, do the Manhattan, but ask them to throw in 6 hits of bitters, and it made a big difference. It gave it a really unique flavor. It gave it a more complex flavor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the components, and then we're going to build it as we always do. Manhattan. So the Manhattan is a 2-to-1 ratio of bourbon or rye to your sweet vermouth, and then it's got a dash of bitters, and then garnished with a cherry. Bourbon and rye are interchangeable for Manhattans. Traditionally, the Manhattan is rye. Not everywhere carries rye, so in some places you're going to get it with bourbon. Rye is spicier. It's a little bit more peppery than bourbon is. Bourbon and rye are 2 different recipes, all part of the same family, but by law, rye has to be 51% rye in the sour mash, while bourbon has to be, again, by law, 51% corn. Today we're doing rye. I have here Brookside Reserve. Haven't tried it yet. I'm excited. Again, this was something that came highly recommended at Total Wine, highly rated, so I was like, all right, let's go for it. I like to explore. I don't have a lot of brand loyalty, to be honest, but It's one where I actually really enjoy. We're still sticking with the DeSalen's Sweet Vermouth. I've said it before, I like the flavor profile. At the price point, you can't beat it. So, aromatic bitters. So aromatic bitters are, I think I talked about it a little bit during the last episode where we talked about the Martinez. Aromatic bitters are, it's bitter, right? Unlike other bitters where you're going to get different flavors including the bitter, this is just going to be spice. It's going to be herby. It's going to be, it's going to be bitter. The most famous of the aromatic bitters is, of course, Angostura bitters. It's the one that has the oversized label on it. I'm using Fiber Others. Solid, available everywhere, or I should say available in most places. So I did like that part of it. And then for cherries, cherries are controversial. Everything's controversial, right? Everybody has an opinion about everything in today's divided environment. So it's one of those where everybody has an opinion about what kind of cherries. I will say this. With the cherries, even though the cherry is literally the garnish, it's the last part of your cocktail, splurge. All right? Don't get the Publix or whatever supermarket you shop at bright red food coloring maraschino cherries for ice cream sundaes. Splurge. Now, mind you, Luxardo cherries are insanely expensive at what, $20 a small jar. But at the same time, there's a difference in the quality. There's a difference, there's a notable difference in these cherries. And treat yourself, right? At the end of the day, it's one of these where it's like, I know, mind you, I'm not saying if you want to spend the $20, and again, if you're making a lot of Manhattans, you're making a lot of cocktails, you're making old fashions, absolutely go for it. It's going to make a difference. If you're not that into it, well, okay, you don't have to. You can find a better price point and something that's cheaper than the Luxardo, slutty cherries at $20 a jar, but still better quality than the generic, ice cream sundae cherries that are that bright red color, artificial food coloring and the like. And like I said, it will make a difference. The flavor isn't just sweet. It's going to give you a more complex flavor, and it's going to really finish off your cocktail. All right, so let's go ahead and build this like we always do. Start off by chilling our glass. Manhattans go in martini glasses, coupes, or Nick and Nora's, whichever you have. I mean, if you want to have it in a rocks glass, you're more than welcome to. Obviously, whatever you have works. Some people don't like martini glasses, and I get it. Well, I'll say this. I understand to a point the martini glass, Nick and Nora, coupe hatred, in the sense that it's not necessarily the sturdiest glass. I feel like if I'm not paying attention and I whack it, it will go flying. So pay attention. Don't tread lightly. But at the same time, the glassware is strategic, right? If you have a rocks glass, for example, unless you have ice in it, that's going to warm up a lot faster than something with a stem, because every time you grab it, you're going to grab it at the bottom, or even if you grab it at the top, you're not going to be able to radiate the heat to it to warm up the drink faster. I have a lot of anxiety. I'll talk about this more when we do the episode on spritzes. I have a lot of anxiety with spritzes with the big bulbous wine glasses. I would prefer them in either, even if it's the stemless ones, but I prefer them in Tom Collins glasses or highballs. Anything else, it's not so much the bulbousness of the glass as much as, to me, the fact that it's like, I feel that, especially, we're having an afternoon drink, we're having a brunch, and there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of action going around. I'm a very animated speaker, and next thing I know, there goes my spritz. I've never had that, I don't have that issue as much with the coupe or the martini glass. I feel it's a sturdier glass than a wine glass is, but at the same time, like I said, it's something where I can recognize if it's something like that. Now you tell me you don't like the coupe, you don't like the martini glass because, oh, it's a girly drink, I prefer a manlier glass. Go fuck yourself. That might have been a little hard, but it's a drink. Don't take yourself so seriously. It's not a big deal. So back to the cocktail. Sorry, let me get off my soapbox for a second here. So the Manhattan is actually a 2-to-1 ratio. So it's going to be 2 ounces or 2 parts of your bourbon or rye. Again, I'm using rye. And right as I uncork the bottle, actually, I could smell the pepperiness of this. So 2 parts, so 1 part of the Sweet Vermouth. And then today, because we're doing just classic specs, we're just going to do 1 dash of the aromatic bitters. Did the 2 technically just because I like to make sure it gets out. Because sometimes that first dash just gives you a little bit of a dribble. So, all right, stir till chilled. Next episode, we're going to do another Manhattan. It's a variant of it. I mentioned it before, it's the perfect Manhattan. Actually, that is my favorite. That's the one where I truly, truly fell in love with. I'll give you a little bit of history on that one as well. Tell you my adventures of drinking perfect martinis. We're nice and chilled there. That's nostalgia in the glass right there. And there we are. Now, I'm going to move everything out of the way here so you guys can see it. Unlike the martinis, unlike the martini, obviously it's not going to be clear because it's not clear alcohol. Unlike the Martinez, it's not going to have as bright of that red coloring because it's balanced out. It's a little bit less of the Sweet Vermouth. This Collins brand actually is great. I'm going to look forward to using these. They're the Maraschino Cherries. I'm looking forward to using these when we get to the old-fashioned chapter because it's got a good thick syrup that I like to use. It's actually Anna de Armas's recipe for the Manhattan that uses the syrup from the cherry. That is just absolutely amazing. So. All right, like I said, looking at this, it's beautiful. It's got a really nice color to it. It's not quite just that strict golden color that you usually get from the bourbon or rye. It's got a little bit of a reddish hue to it. That's gorgeous. And yeah, let me take a sip and let you know what I think. Yeah, that's good. So, right off the bat, it is surprisingly soft for a spirit-forward drink. It doesn't have, when you're drinking a Manhattan, excuse me, when you're drinking the martinis, the Gibsons, you get that, rush of gin or vodka right away. Here, I don't know what it is, the combination of the Sweet Vermouth and the rye, you get the pepperiness at the end, but it's actually really soft coming on, on the palate. Starts off smooth, finishes smooth with that peppery finish. To make this my own, I definitely need a little bit more bitters. Bitters are the seasoning, right? So when we talk about recipes, when we talk about cocktails, bitters are your spices, right? It's basically your salt, your pepper. So you want to lean a cocktail one way or another, you're going to be using those bitters. And especially as you get into the more niche of the bitters, those are going to be the ones that really give you those flavors. When you get into like the tiki bitters, when you get into like the Mexican chocolate, you know, the orange, the grapefruit, you know, those are going to give you hints of citrus that they're going to give you a little bit of bitterness as well, but it's also going to give you subtle nuances into the cocktail that you only get by adding either bitters or those ingredients. So has to be cold. I will say that it has to be a cold Manhattan. Is, you know, once it's been sitting, well, if you let it sit for a while, you know, it's still enjoyable, but at the same time you want that freshly poured cold beverage. Got a subtle warmthness as you're drinking it. It's so like I said, it goes down really smooth, but you have that flavor, and again, it's going to be the pepperiness from the rye. Bourbon and rye both have a sweetness to it, right? It's the sour mash. It's the flavoring. So the combination of the actual sweetness that you're getting, the actual sweetness that you get from the sweet vermouth, as well as the, you know, the subtle sweetness from that from the rye, gives it that flavor, you know, that it's one of a kind. It is really something amazing. I love them. Not gonna have these, you know, it's to me, this is a good way to start the night. Unlike the martini, so the martini or the Gibson, I like to have those before dinner, right? So it's one of those where it's like, all right, you know, we're going out, I'm traveling, girlfriend's getting ready, I'm gonna go downstairs to the hotel bar and have 1 or 2 martinis before we go to dinner. I like the Manhattan for starting the night, but at the same time, I don't necessarily need or even want this to be like a pre-dinner drink, just because of the fact that it is sweeter. So it's something where I'm not necessarily craving that meal after I go for this. But I think I've told you guys everything I know, or everything I want to share with you guys about this cocktail, about Manhattans and my experience in general. Like I said before, my next episode will be another Manhattan. Oh, actually, I did want to compare it. Compared to the Martinez, right? So I told you guys last time, you know, the Martinez is considered to be comparable to a Manhattan. I disagree. This isn't a sweet. It is sweet, but it doesn't have that same level of sweetness as the Martinez did. The Martinez was very sweet. This to me was very subtly sweet. So it's not the same as that. Flavor profile, again, we're going gin versus rye, complete opposite ends of the spectrum. The only thing is that it does have this subtle fruitiness. The Martinez had the maraschino liqueur, which obviously gives you that cherry flavor. Here, the only fruitiness you're getting is the subtle notes of cherry or stone fruit that you get typically in a sweet vermouth. So again, it's one of those where it's like, I can see why people make the comparison, but I don't agree with it. Like I said, this is one where I actually shared after I went off camera. I had my girlfriend try the Martinez, and initially she was shocked. You know, she was kind of like, but she actually did. She was like, okay, this is actually very sweet. And I think beyond, you know, the initial shock, because she knows my palate when it comes to drinks, I think she was anticipating something far worse, and she actually enjoyed it. You know, she was kind of like, okay, I could see myself drinking this. You know, now that I've gotten over the initial shock, I could see this being something. I know, even though my girlfriend does drink whiskey, I don't see her drinking a Manhattan at a bar, or even hear me making them for her. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually eat the cherry, just so you guys have an idea of what to expect now that it's been sitting in the alcohol for a little bit, and then I'm gonna tell you about that and sign off, you know, before I drink too much of this on camera. Yeah, like I said before, those cherries are actually very good. A a little more sour than other versions of those Maraschino cherries, like the Luxardo brand. I don't think it has that sour cherry finish, but this actually had which was a nice surprise. I actually really like that. But it's got a really good flavor. It's sweet, and it's been, you know, soaking in the alcohol. It's obviously not going to be soaking enough that it's going to give you like a cherry bomb type or you know, like an infused alcohol type situation. But it just gives you that hint of the cocktail while you're eating the cherry. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and like I always do, I'm gonna finish this off camera. Thanks, you know, if you've been enjoying the content, like and subscribe. As always, shout out to Luis Gavarete, who actually was asking for whiskey cocktails. So by all means, you know, this is day one. Tomorrow or whenever the next episode is, that's going to be the next one, and then, you know, we're going to have a little bit of a lull of whiskey cocktails for a little while before we get to like the old-fashioned section, and then there's a few other ones that are going to be peppered here and there. But again, right now, I'm going to sign off. Like I said before, like and subscribe. Comment down below if you guys have anything you guys want to see. If you guys are liking the content, if you guys try anything, come back and give me feedback. And by all means, like I said, I love hearing from you guys. Shout out to Isabel, my biggest fan so far, so thank you. Shout out to Maria, who's always there supporting me. And yeah, like I said, I'm really enjoying this so far, so I really hope you guys are too. And you have a good night. Thanks.